You need to leave, Pops, right now. Bar's closed to you. The voice cut through the low murmur of the Friday evening crowd like a blade through canvas. Young, sharp, laced with the unearned confidence of youth. It belonged to a man named Derek Stoller, 29 years old, 6'2", and built like a competition fighter, wearing the khaki and black of a Navy SEAL petty officer first class. His trident pin caught the neon from the Budweiser sign above the bar and threw a small cold star of light across the wall. He had been in this bar for exactly 40 minutes. In that time, he had bought a round for his table, laughed too loudly twice, and now stood over a booth in the far corner, with his arms crossed and his chin lowered, and his eyes doing the thing young men do when they want someone smaller to feel the full weight of their size. The man in the booth had not looked up. His name was Raymond Earl Kowalski, and he was 83 years old. He sat with the particular stillness of weathered granite, not frozen, not afraid, simply rooted in a way that had nothing to do with youth or strength. He wore a faded flannel shirt the color of old sage, its cuffs rolled twice to the forearm. His jeans were worn pale at the knees. His hands rested flat on the table beside a glass of water and a bowl of soup he had been working through slowly. And those hands were a mapwork of wrinkles and liver spots and the thick-knuckled evidence of a life spent doing things. But they were perfectly, utterly still. On the table beside his water glass, wrapped in a piece of old chamois cloth tied with a leather cord, lay something long and cylindrical that he had leaned gently against the wall when he came in, and which he had apparently set on the table while he waited for his order. It was a rifle, or the wrapped shape of one. Stoller's eyes had been on it since Kowalski sat down. "Sir," the word was not respectful. It was a prod. "I'm talking to you. Bar doesn't allow weapons. That goes for old fogies, too." Kowalski raised his eyes then. They were pale blue, the color of a winter sky in January, and they possessed a depth that did not reflect aggression so much as absorb it entirely, the way deep water absorbs a thrown stone. He looked at Derek Stoller for a long, quiet moment. "It's wrapped, and it's not loaded," he said. His voice was low, the kind of rumble that you felt in the chest before you heard it with the ears, the sound of gravel rolling down a dry creek bed. "And I know the owner. I've been coming in here since before you were born." That was all he said. He lowered his eyes back to his soup. The bar was called the Anchor and Rope, and it sat 3 blocks from the naval base at Coronado, California, which meant it had been full of military men and women for 40 years. And it had the feel of a place that understood the weight of what service asked of people. The walls were covered in unit plaques and signed photographs and challenge coins mounted behind glass. The floor was dark hardwood, scarred by decades of boots. The air smelled of wood smoke from the fireplace in the back corner and cold beer, and the faint salt of the ocean 2 streets over. The jukebox in the corner had gone quiet between songs, and in that quiet, Derek Stoller's voice carried further than he may have intended. At the bar, a young woman named Alicia Morales was pretending to wipe glasses. She was 26, worked 4 shifts a week, and had been behind this bar long enough to know when something was wrong before it became something worse. She watched Stoller over the rim of the glass she was not really cleaning. 3 of Stoller's teammates, all of them young, all of them built like architecture, all of them carrying the particular energy of men recently returned from something difficult, sat at a table 12 feet away. 2 of them watched. 1 of them looked at his phone. This was the audience. Stoller glanced back at them. Something shifted in his posture. He turned back to the booth. "You know what I think, old-timer?" He pulled out the chair across from Kowalski and sat down without being invited, planting his elbows on the table, leaning in. His voice had changed. It had acquired the carrying quality of a performance now, shaped for the ears of the men behind him. I think you saw the sign on the door that says military welcome and figured that counted you. But that sign's for people who are still serving. Or at least who served enough to matter. He nodded at the wrapped rifle. What is that, a musket? You the last of the Minutemen? The table behind him gave him the laugh he had been fishing for. Kowalski did not react. He took a careful spoonful of soup. What unit? Stolar said. It was not a friendly question. It was a challenge designed to expose. Navy, Kowalski said, without looking up. Navy. Stolar spread his hands. What, you peel potatoes on a carrier? Push paper somewhere? No offense, Pops, but the guys here, we work for a living. Some of us serve. Some of us just wore the uniform and called it a career. He reached across and tapped the chamois-wrapped rifle with 2 fingers. And none of us bring antiques to a bar. The touch was light, almost casual. Raymond Kowalski's eyes went somewhere else entirely. The smell of spilled beer and wood smoke dissolved as completely as if a door had slammed shut on it. And what replaced it was the green rot of jungle vegetation and the metallic tang of rain on steel, and something beneath both of those things. The mineral smell of earth that had been disturbed recently, violently, and with intent. He was 19 years old and lying flat in the dark on a ridge above the Thu Ben River, and the rain was coming down at a 30-degree angle through triple canopy foliage that reduced the light to nothing. His name then was Ray Kowalski, and he had been in country for 11 weeks, and he had made 7 shots at distance, and he had not missed. The rifle beneath his hands was not his rifle. It had been given to him 3 weeks earlier by a master gunnery sergeant named Harlan Birch, who was 53 years old and had been doing this since Korea, who had pressed it into Ray's hands and said, "This rifle is true, son. You treat it that way." Birch had been medevaced 2 days later with a chest wound that did not kill him, but ended his war. Ray had written the address of Birch's farm in Kansas on a piece of duct tape and stuck it inside the chamois cloth. He was watching a single palm frond 12 meters downslope. The rain was coming from the north, but the frond was moving northeast. And what that told him was that the wind was not a single thing tonight. It was layered. And at the distance of the shot he needed to make, that mattered. His radio man, a 19-year-old from Macon, Georgia, named Delmar Finch, was pressed flat beside him with his face in the mud, whispering the coordinates into the handset with a voice so quiet it barely existed. Finch looked at him. What Ray Kowalski saw in Finch's eyes in that moment, the complete, absolute trust, the certainty that whatever Ray did next was the right thing to do, he had never been able to describe to anyone. Not once in 64 years. He made the shot. But that was not what the memory was. The memory was what came after the walk back through the dark, Finch beside him, both of them not speaking. The rain stopping suddenly and the stars appearing through the canopy like an apology. And then the sound of it, the single flat crack from somewhere behind them, and Finch going down without a word. Ray was beside him before he understood what had happened. He held Finch's hand for 4 minutes in the dark, while Finch looked up at the stars through the canopy with an expression of mild surprise that never changed. He was still holding Finch's hand when the reaction team found them. The rifle had been Finch's idea to keep. Birch said it was true, Finch had said, a week before he died. You keep a true rifle. The memory vanished. The fire crackled in the corner of the anchor and rope. The jukebox had started again, something low and mournful about coming home, and Raymond Kowalski was 83 years old, and his soup had gone slightly cold, and Derek Stolar's fingers were still resting on the chamois cloth. Kowalski did not say anything. He simply looked at Stolar's hand until the younger man pulled it back. "I'm going to need you to leave," Stolar said. His voice had hardened past performance now into something more genuinely unpleasant. He stood, which brought his full height back into the space, and placed both hands flat on the table and leaned down so that his face was 18 inches from Kowalski's. This bar is for the guys who are still out there doing the work, not museum pieces. He reached down and picked up the wrapped rifle, not threatening, precisely, but not careful either, lifting it from the table with one hand. At the bar, Alicia Morales set down the glass she was not cleaning. She walked with deliberate casualness to the end of the bar, bent below the counter, and lifted the hinged section. She pushed through the door marked staff only. In the back hallway that smelled of cleaning solution and old wood, she leaned against the wall and pulled out her phone. She scrolled to a contact she had programmed in 8 months ago after the bar owner, a retired master chief named Pete Guerrera, had told her very specifically, "If you ever see this name come through the door, you call this number. Don't think about it. Just call." She called the number. It rang twice. Naval Special Warfare Command, duty officer. "My name is Alicia Morales. I work at the Anchor and Rope Bar on Orange Avenue. There is a man here named Raymond Kowalski, and there's a situation developing, and Pete Guerrera told me the silence that followed was sudden and total, as if someone had pressed a hand over a microphone. It stretched for 3 full seconds. When the voice came back, it was not the same voice. It was stripped of all bureaucratic pleasantry, clipped and urgent, and carrying an undertone she had not heard before. "Say that name again." "Raymond Kowalski." Another silence, shorter. "Raymond Earl Kowalski?" "Ah, yes, I think so." "Where exactly are you?" "Address," she gave it. "Don't let anyone touch him. Don't let anyone touch anything he has with him. Do you understand me? We will have people there. Do not let that man be moved." A pause, and then, lower. "Thank you, Miss Morales. You did the right thing." The line did not go dead, she could hear, in the sudden background rush before the call disconnected, the sound of a chair scraping back and a voice saying something sharp and urgent that she couldn't make out. She stood in the hallway for a moment, her phone pressed against her sternum, and then she went back out to the bar. 14 miles away, in an office at the Naval Special Warfare Command building at NAB Coronado, a duty officer named Lieutenant Commander Harris walked quickly down a corridor and knocked once on a closed door and opened it without waiting. The man behind the desk was Rear Admiral James Calloway, 2 stars, and he was reviewing personnel reports for the following week. He looked up. Harris said a name. Calloway was out of his chair before Harris finished the sentence. In the Anchor and Rope, Stoller had set the wrapped rifle on the table and was now standing back from the booth with his arms crossed, speaking in a voice that had dropped to something quieter and colder. His teammates at the table had gone from watching with amusement to watching with something more careful. The bar had gone quiet the way bars go quiet when a situation has crossed from entertainment into something no one is sure how to characterize. "Last time," Stoller said, "you're going to pick up your antique and your cold soup and walk out of here on your own, or I'm going to help you walk out. Your choice, old-timer." Kowalski had not moved. His hands were flat on the table. His pale eyes were on the middle distance. He said quietly, without looking at the younger man, "You put that back where it was, son. I'll put it wherever I want." "No, it was one word," said the way a period is placed at the end of a sentence, final, structurally complete. "You won't." Stoller reached down and picked up the wrapped rifle again, this time with both hands, as if he intended to carry it to the door. The sound came before anyone saw anything. It started as a low multiple vehicle rumble felt through the soles of boots and bar stools before it registered as sound. the specific bass note of heavy military transport moving in coordination, the way it vibrates in the sternum differently from civilian traffic. Then the lights. The sweeping white-blue of them through the bar's front windows, strobing across the plaques and photographs on the walls. Then the sound of doors, not one door but many, opening and shutting in rapid precision, the crack of them like a single word spoken in a language everyone in the building understood immediately. The front door of the anchor and rope opened. 12 men came through it. They moved with practiced, chilling economy of motion. No hurry, no theater. Simply a coordinated placement of bodies that resulted in 12 Navy SEALs in operational dress, some in desert khaki and some in navy blue, arrayed across the entrance of the bar in a formation that was not quite a block, and not quite a line, but was absolutely, unmistakably intentional. They did not touch anyone. They did not say anything. They simply stood. Behind them came a man in dress whites. Rear Admiral James Calloway, 2 stars, walked through the formation without breaking stride. He was 57 years old, silver-haired, and he walked like a man who had not needed to raise his voice in 20 years. He did not look at Derek Stoller. He did not look at the men at the table. He did not look at the bartender or the other patrons or the unit plaques on the wall. His eyes found Raymond Kowalski in the back booth immediately, as if everything else in the room was simply geography between here and there, and he moved across the bar floor with measured, deliberate steps. His polished shoes on the hardwood were the only sound. He saw the rifle in Stoller's hands. He saw Stoller's face. Something in Calloway's expression changed, not dramatically, not with theatrical fury, but the way a temperature changes, the way a room gets colder from a direction you can't immediately locate. His eyes narrowed to something very focused and very still. Stoller felt it. His hands loosened on the rifle. Calloway stopped in front of the booth. He looked at Raymond Kowalski, at the faded flannel, the worn jeans, the liver-spotted hands resting flat on the table, the untouched bowl of soup, for a long moment. Then Rear Admiral James Calloway, 2 stars, United States Navy, brought his right hand up in a salute. It was the sharpest, most breathtakingly precise salute Derek Stoller had ever seen in his life. It was the kind of salute that made every salute Stoller had ever given feel like a rough draft. It was held 1 second, 2, 3, directed at the 83-year-old man in the booth who looked like someone's retired grandfather, and Calloway did not drop it until Kowalski, slowly, lifted his right hand and returned it. The bar was absolutely silent. Stoller's face had gone the color of old chalk. The wrapped rifle hung from his hands, as if he had forgotten it was there. Calloway sat down in the chair across from Kowalski, the same chair Stoller had occupied 20 minutes earlier, and he said, quietly and without preamble, "Sorry we're late, Senior Chief." "You made fine time," Kowalski said. Calloway looked up. He looked at Stoller. Then he looked at the rifle in Stoller's hands. "Would you put that down, petty officer?" Stoller set it on the table as if it had become very heavy. Calloway's eyes stayed on him. "Do you know what you're holding?" Stoller's jaw moved. Nothing came out. That weapon was issued to Master Gunnery Sergeant Harlan Birch, United States Marine Corps, in 1951. It went with him to the Chosin Reservoir. When Birch rotated to Vietnam in 1965, he carried it again. In 1966, he gave it to a 19-year-old Navy SEAL petty officer 2nd class, who was running special reconnaissance missions with Mac Sog along the Thu Ben River. Calloway paused. That petty officer used it to make 31 confirmed long-range kills in a 14-month operational period. At the time of his rotation home, that number represented the 4th highest confirmed total in Navy SEAL history. He subsequently returned for 2 more tours. Another pause, shorter. His confirmed total now stands at 47. He holds the second highest confirmed long-range kill record in the history of naval special warfare. The jukebox had gone quiet again. No one had moved to change it. Raymond Earl Kowalski, Calloway said, and his voice had taken on a quality that was neither loud nor soft, but was the kind of voice that fills a room from the floor to the ceiling, served 4 operational tours in Vietnam. He served under MACV-SOG in operations that remain classified at levels that most people in this room do not have the clearance to hear described. He received the Silver Star. He received the Bronze Star with Valor, twice. He received the Navy Cross. A beat. He received the Medal of Honor in 1971 for actions during the Battle of Dak Sing, during which he carried 2 wounded operators through 700 meters of active enemy contact with a gunshot wound in his left thigh, and did not stop until both men were beyond the kill zone. Calloway's eyes moved back to Stoller. Both men survived. They were at his Medal of Honor ceremony. One of them is currently a retired Rear Admiral. The silence in the bar had become a physical thing. The enemy called him something, Calloway said. You want to know what they called him? It was not a question. The North Vietnamese Army had a phrase for him. Translated roughly, it means, the man the jungle sends. Because he would go in, and there would be no trace of his approach. No sign. He simply appeared in their operations and then was gone. They said this in the way people say things they are afraid of. They paid a significant bounty for information leading to him. No one ever collected. Calloway looked at Stoller for a long moment. The rifle you just picked up. The antique. The museum piece. It was present for all of it. Derek Stoller was not performing for anyone now. The men at his table were very still. What followed was handled with the institutional precision that the United States Navy brings to such things. Stoller was separated from his teammates and escorted to a vehicle by 2 of the SEALs who had come through the door. There would be formal proceedings, a captain's mast, a mandatory review, a retraining program that would be thorough and not gentle. The Navy does not ignore what Stoller had done. The Navy also does not destroy a 29-year-old for blindness, when blindness is still correctable. Stoller was young. Fire and arrogance, in the right hands, become something useful. That was the institution's calculation to make. But before Stoller reached the door, Raymond Kowalski stood. He rose slowly, with the deliberate economy of a man who had learned not to waste motion, and he crossed the bar floor, and he placed his right hand gently on Stoller's left shoulder, the same shoulder Stoller had used to crowd him, the same shoulder whose space had been invaded twice in the last 20 minutes. The inversion was quiet and complete, and everyone in the bar felt it without being told what they were feeling. Stoller looked at him. "The gear helps," Kowalski said. His voice was the same low rumble, carrying no triumph, no satisfaction, no edge of any kind. "I know what it cost you to earn that trident. I'm not dismissing it." He held Stoller's eyes. "But there's something the gear doesn't give you. Doesn't matter how much it costs or how good it is, it doesn't give you what 60 years gives you. 60 years of carrying something." He glanced once at the chamois-wrapped rifle on the table, and then back. "The war doesn't stay in the country you left it in, son. You'll figure that out when you do. When the gear is in a bag in your garage, and you're sitting at a table somewhere with 60 years behind you. Remember this night. Not how it started, how it finished." He took his hand from Stoller's shoulder. He went back to the booth. He sat. He picked up his spoon. 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, in late November. Raymond Kowalski was at the counter of a hardware store on 3rd Avenue when a man came in. He was thinner than before. The uniform was gone, replaced by civilian clothes, a gray sweatshirt, work boots that had never seen a work site. The swagger was not replaced by weakness. Exactly, it was replaced by the posture of someone who had been thoroughly and usefully humbled, which is a different thing entirely. He stood in the entrance of the hardware store for a moment, and then he walked to the counter. Kowalski did not look up until the man was 3 feet away. Derek Stoller stood there with his hands at his sides. He looked at the old man's face. "I came to say I was wrong," he said. "About all of it." Kowalski looked at him for a moment. He reached over and picked up the small paper bag with his hardware, screws, a length of chain, and he said, "Come on, I'm going to get a coffee. You can have one too if you want." They walked out together into the cool California morning, the old man and the young one, and the door swung shut behind them. There are men and women who walk among us every day, who carry wars that ended before most of us were born, and the weight of what they carry would stop the rest of us cold, if we could feel it for a single moment. You will not always know them by what they're wearing. You will sometimes find them at the corner booth, with a bowl of soup, hands steady, eyes carrying depths you can't measure. The only appropriate response is what Raymond Kowalski offered, and what every quiet hero deserves. The same grace they gave to strangers in the dark, in the mud, in the rain, for reasons that had nothing to do with being thanked. If you were moved by Raymond's story of quiet courage and timeless wisdom, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, and be sure to subscribe to Veteran Valor for more stories of America's unassuming heroes.